All right, everyone. We've hit 12 noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I quickly wanted to say hello to a couple of folks on here. Tony DeGrona, Lily Wu, thank you so much for joining us. Brooke, thank you for coming around. We have a lot of our school district folks on out from California and many other places across the country. So thank you all for joining us. Our thoughts are especially with all of you, all of our education clients in particular. We know that things are definitely very, very tricky and hard for you all right now. And I think, as we're doing these crisis webinars, there's certain crises that you just can't quite plan for. I'm thinking this is maybe one of those, but we're here to try and help you as much as we can, share some valuable information, reach out to our faculty members who also have some great thoughts and insights to help us all get through this. So to get started, of course, I want to welcome you all today and thank you for joining us for Positive Psychology during the coronavirus crisis with Dr. Chris Maxwell. Before we dive in with Chris, I first want to go over a few administrative notes. Our schedule for today's webinar will go as follows. Dr. Maxwell will present for about 20 to 30 minutes or so. He's has some great valuable slides he'll share with you. And then after that, he will answer a handful of questions. You're free to add questions to the Q&A area as he's presenting. I will collect them and I will read a few of them to Chris during that Q&A time. We do ask that you keep your questions pertinent to the content that Chris has presented. So questions asking him to expand further on a concept or how to apply it are perfectly appropriate in this particular scenario. We have quite a few new folks with us today, so we're really glad that people all across our current clients and new interested folks are finding what we're putting out there helpful and valuable. For anyone who's not heard about Diamond 6 and what we do, I'd like to take a minute to tell you about us a bit so you know kind of where we're coming from and what we do. Diamond 6 Leadership and Strategy is a leadership development business located in central Pennsylvania. We're near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And our mission is to develop confident and effective leaders who make an impact on their community and the world. And we do this through custom leadership development workshops for organizations, school districts, and associations across the country. Our faculty members are all distinguished, experienced, and deeply knowledgeable in various areas of individual and organizational leadership. If you want to learn more about us, you can definitely go to our website, diamond6leadership.com. You've probably stumbled on there some way through registering for this, and we'll be sending the recording out for this particular presentation tomorrow, and so you'll end up there as well. Joining us today is Dr. Chris Maxwell. Chris is at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and he's been a Diamond 6 faculty member for many, many years now. I've had the pleasure of hearing Chris speak many times on a variety of different topics and speaking alongside him as well. So I know for sure that his experiences, his thoughts, and his teachings have been valuable for so many of our clients. He has studied positive psychology, which he'll be sharing some key insights about with us today and how we can certainly use these concepts in this particular crisis. And we're definitely seeing for ourselves in times of crisis and uncertainty and stress is what we're experiencing right now. Taking care of ourselves and our minds is one of the most important things we can do. So Chris, I want to thank you so much for being with us here today, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tanya. It's nice to be with everybody today, and I hope you can hear what I'm saying and hope the message is helpful to you. I'm going to share my screen, and it looks like, can everybody see the screen? Is that, Tanya, can you see?
Yep, Chris, it looks great. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to just jump straight in. I'm going to try and keep this to about 25 to 30 minutes. I think many of us are on many webinars. I'm actually teaching a graduate course online, not by choice, but that's because the university up here in where I live in central Pennsylvania is closed, of course, like everything else. And so we've moved a graduate course online. And I won't call them lectures, but my class times are 2 hours. And holding a conversation with 40 or 50 students for 2 hours online is quite a struggle. So I know, the technical issues and just the difficulty of talking like this is a challenge for everybody. On the other hand, boy, are we lucky. Can you imagine if we didn't have online ability to talk and exchange information? So, we're making the best out of it. And I think if we have this sort of attitude that we can get through and that maybe this online connection will help us, then I think it's a good thing. But anyway, I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet and talk a little bit about positive psychology. As Tanya said, I did the graduate program in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania. It was the only and the first program in the world, and the program director was Martin Seligman, and it still is, in fact. And Martin Seligman is a professor of psychology and director of the Positive Psychology Center at the university. And, is world famous for what he did. And essentially, his contribution to the field is that when he was elected president of the American Psychological Association, he came in with a new platform. And his platform was, we spend a great deal of time talking about depression and anxiety and the troubles of. Can't we switch the conversation at some points to talking about the positive? So he's developed a whole program in positive psychology, focusing on how can we improve our lives and improve each other's lives, and just basically making a big change in the field, that now we look forward and we try to find what's best in life and how can we build those things. Not that we neglect the difficulties and the challenges that people have, those are still being addressed, but we're also at the same time training people to look forward and find the positive in things that we do. So when Tanya and Jeff asked, can we think about this in terms of coronavirus, I tried to find 4 areas that I thought might be helpful, and they're on the screen here. If we talk about character strengths and positive emotion, resilience, and optimism, those are all things that we can address in one way or another, and much of it is research-based. And I wanted to try and stick to what we know and what we've tested and what really does work. So I'll try and cover some of those things today. All right, my screen did not advance. I'm not sure what that means. Here we go. All right, so positive psychology includes all of these components. How can we work on building happiness? How can we engage people in their work? In the field, we call it flow. And the best example I have is if you're climbing a mountain and you're focused on the mountain and you're focused on your handhold and you're focused on your feet and you're looking at the rock, you are totally absorbed in what you're doing. That's flow. And one of the things in positive psychology is to help people find flow and meaning in their work so that people are engaged and actually do good work and feel good about the work they do. We also talk about character strengths, which is the positive, the best in us, the personality profile, if you will, of the character strengths that we have and that others have, and learn how to, number one, know them, and number two, to build and use them. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Gratitude, of course, is a great thing in positive psychology, and I'll talk a little bit about a gratitude exercise. If I forget, you remind me, I'll do it at the end. We're talking about resilience in positive psychology, great deal of work in resilience. At the University of Pennsylvania, a huge amount of work has been done with students, and particularly younger students, and how to build resilience in those students and populations. Positive relationships, of course, is the goal. So we're working on how do you build and maintain positive relationships. Positive emotion, in other words, why are we happy and what's the point in being happy? What does it do for us? Not just that we laugh, but what happens to our bodies and our thought processes. So positive emotion is a big topic. And finally, optimism. These are just, 9 ideas that I just pulled out of positive psychology. I can't talk about them all, but I'll try and focus in on just a couple of them and see where it goes. So I'm going to talk about character strengths, positive emotion, resilience, and optimism in little chunks. And I'm going to try and bring in from the web things that people are saying right now. And I will provide to Tanya at the end, I'll give her a list of links. I can type them on a piece of paper and send it to her, and she can get it out to all of you so you can go out and see what I saw and find some of the links and read up on them yourselves. I think that might be helpful to you. So first, character strengths. You should know and use your character strengths, particularly in this challenging time. If you haven't already been out to the website and measured your character strengths and learned a little bit about them, I think now's a great time to do it. You could do it at home with your families. If you're in contact with students, you can do it with students. And it's just, number one, it's a great exercise. But number two, once you know your strengths, it doesn't hurt to know your family's character strengths, and it doesn't hurt to know your students' character strengths. So this is why I think it's important right now at this time. So number one, character strengths are things that help define what's best about us. You know, so all of the character strengths are positive. There are no weakness strengths, or sometimes we might call a strength that you don't have but would like, we might call it a lesser strength. But you can definitely focus on and build any of these strengths. So if you look down at the bottom of the slide, there's a black bar, and it says wisdom and knowledge, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. Seligman and Peterson did an enormous study. Their book is over 600 pages, but they rigorously went through documents in all cultures, from the Greeks to the East and the West of the world, and looked at core documents, the Bible, the Quran, looked through them to find out what is it that all cultures value. And they came up with 6 virtues. And the virtues are: all cultures appreciate wisdom and knowledge, all value courage, all value the common bond we have with others, they value justice, temperance, and transcendence. And so under those, the authors built a number of strengths in each area. So you can see under wisdom and knowledge, creativity, curiosity, judgment, love of learning, and perspective. Some of these are very easy to understand. Others, sort of, it's a little hidden. So for instance, judgment doesn't mean judging people. It means critical thinking. Are you able to apply judgment to what you're doing? So all of these 24 strengths that are scattered in the color here are strengths that can be measured quite effectively and give you some knowledge about what's my top strength, what's my middle strength, what's my lesser strength, and then where do I want to focus? Can I bring my strengths to work? Do I do the kind of work that allows me to apply my strengths? So that's a general idea behind why we should do a test and actually get our results. So they're all positive, they're all measurable, remarkably accurately. And importantly, character strengths are sort of like traits. They're not skills, they're not talents, they're more, you know, opportunity and environment, and maybe some from our family, early life. So we build these strengths, and we're all different. What's interesting is they're reasonably stable. So if you do the test in a couple of years from now, and then you do it again in a couple of years, it'll probably be just about the same. They're not fixed, but they're reasonably stable, and they're not grounded in genetic characteristics. So you didn't inherit these things generally. They're sort of, you build and develop these. What I've found really interesting over the years is if you do your strengths and you find out what your strengths are, other people, if you ask them, what do you think my top strength is? They often have a pretty good idea. In other words, they're not like invisible. People know if you're a creative person. People know if you show bravery at the office. People know if you're a kind person. So it's very interesting to, number one, to sort of reassure yourself that these are my strengths, and then try and demonstrate them and build on them at work. But know that if you have a fairly close relationship, people will probably know anyway. So they're sort of, they'll send it back to you that, yes, I understand you are this type of person. So it's something that I think most of us, if we have not done this test, you'd really benefit from it, particularly now. So strengths are associated with positive life outcomes, and there is big big studies done to show that those who know their strengths and apply them, and that's important, and apply them, do really well at school, do better than students who don't know their strengths, build positive emotions and good behaviors, increase life satisfaction and well-being and feelings of happiness. So there's really, really good reason to do a character strengths personality profile and sort of get familiar with, so what did my test tell me? Now, it used to be online 220 questions, which was, you know, fairly agonizing to go through. Now they've cut it down to about 110, and it might even be a little less than that now. So as we've refined the test, and something like 8 million or something people have taken this test, they've actually made it more accurate and simpler and more generally applicable to more people. So it works in any culture. I've done this in China, I've done it in Thailand, I've done it in Mexico, and we've done it all over the United States. So you can actually benefit from this, and I think it would be very helpful. Here's how you do it. So if you haven't already done the character strength, or you want to share the link, viacharacter.org gets you in. The test was developed at the University of Pennsylvania. It's now run by a company called VIA, Institute of Character. It's free, and it will be free forever. So, you know, essentially all that research, that 600-page book, has gone into building this test, and it's been given away, and it's being used all around the world. And it's scientifically valid and reliable. So I think that's a good thing. So here I've done this test. Some of these pictures are from Thailand, some are from China. The ones, the people in the yellow t-shirts, a very happy group I did in Mexico. And it was actually 2 universities that were merging their senior staff, and, you know, created some issues within the company or within the university of how shall we manage with you. You're new, I've been here a while. And so they did the test, and then they post their results on these little stickies around the wall. And you can see they really enjoyed getting to know each other and seeing what strengths do we have as a group and what strengths are we not so good at and how can we build those. Other ones I've done in the classroom. But anyway, you can see people generally are smiling and happy when they get their results. And especially if you do it in a group, people really enjoy doing this in a group. So this is a good thing to do, I think, particularly now. I thought I'd show you this one just for fun. I teach a graduate course, so over the last few years, I've been asking students to do this. So these are graduate business students, and some really surprising results. And this, I think, is from 2019. But if you look all the way down to fairness, it's about 2/3 of the way down, you'll see at the end of that bar, it says 0.5. That means 50% of the students in the class said that fairness was their top strength, and they reported their top 5. But the highest, most frequently occurring strength in the top 5 strengths for the class was fairness. So if now you look and go see what's next, honesty. 45% of the class said honesty was in my top 5. Kindness. 40% of the class said kindness was one of my top 5 strengths. And down at the bottom, 3 from the bottom, love. 40% of the class said love is important to me. Well, this is a really nice picture when you think about it. And these are graduate students in business, and they're going to go out and get jobs in business and around the world. And what are they telling us? Love, kindness, honesty, fairness matters to them, and is one of their top characteristics. I think it's a great thing to see. So anyway, what was really peculiar, and I'll share it with you next, is I've done it in 2018 and 2019 and 2020 with this group of students. So every year, these are new students. The last class doesn't know the class coming in, so there's no influence. So here's 2018 and 2019, their results for the top 5. Absolutely amazingly to me, kindness is in both groups. Honesty is in both groups. Love is in both groups. Judgment or critical thinking, which is good because they're students, shows up. And fairness. Both groups, even though they never met each other and don't know each other, both said, my top 5 strengths are this wonderful group of fairness, honesty, love, kindness, and judgment. Not bad. So I think there are really good reasons to do it yourself, and really good reasons to encourage other groups to do it. And just, you know, this is good feedback for people. as I leave the university, these are the characteristics, the strengths that I take with me, and I'm willing to share and build on them. So from the science, this is a Seligman study from 2005. So that's a little while ago, but this was an early study checking for, so how can we help people? And they came up with something called positive interventions. If I can develop an intervention that makes you feel better, that's something that positive psychology can add to the field of psychology and treatment. And so you can see they have a placebo group. I'm talking about the one that's blocked in yellow, by the way. I'm going to use my signature strengths. The group that's the experimental group, and the group that's placebo just simply was asked, I'm going to write in my journal every night about my childhood. So that has nothing to do with anything. It was just a placebo treatment. So you can see the white columns within 1 week after their test. The experimental group did their strengths and planned on how they would use them. The group that did the placebo just kept writing in their journal. And you can see 6 months later, happiness has shot up and has stayed up in the group that used signature strengths. The group that did not basically is below the happiness level of the experimental group in almost all cases after the experiment was started. So it's very interesting. So we're going to talk more about some of these other blocks, but I just wanted to show you these aren't just good ideas that are cooked up and pushed out there. These are actually tested and used by science, and then science is then used to spread the word and encourage people to do this stuff. So I'm going to try and add an idea from the web for each of the 4 blocks that we're going to talk about. And you can go to, this is GGIA, I think that's the greater good in action, but bottom line, it's California, Berkeley, in Berkeley, California, has a great science institute, greater good science institute. And this is, you know, just an idea of how do you do the strengths thing. So you figure out what one of your personal strengths are. If it's creativity, now figure out how can I use this today in a new way, and keep trying every day to build that strength of creativity. You can go on down the list. I'll make sure you get some of this, but you can repeat this every day for a week. And that's exactly what was done in this last study. The people tell that they actually measure their strengths and apply them. And then if you did a happiness test before and after, and there are happiness indexes that are available, then you can measure where I started and where I ended up. But you know, this is very simple, but it's backed by science. And I think that's the important point. So you can go out to this greater good in action institute at Berkeley and just check it out and see what you think. Again, VIA character, this is how you get there. It's totally free. All right, positive emotion, I think, is the next block. Let's talk about that a little bit. Barbara Fredrickson, she's now at the University of North Carolina, came up with what she called the broaden and build theory. If you look at the little diagram here, the graphic on the left is looks like somebody who's pretty angry. In the middle is we're hiding because we're afraid. And on the right is I've eaten something and it's making me sick, so I want to spit it out. That's disgust. These are all negative emotions. And negative emotions are good, because when we're talking about survival, negative emotions narrow our thoughts, narrow our field of vision, and help us think about, I'm in a survival mode here. How do I defend myself? To do that, you have to narrow your thoughts, narrow your actions, narrow your vision, and focus. And that's how you get through. So negative emotions are not bad things, actually, in terms of survival. This is why we've survived as long as we have. So what's the good of positive emotions? And she says it's just the opposite. Positive emotions broaden our mindset. They make us want to explore. They give us, you know, a broader attention. We can see and think about more things. And most importantly, the more positive emotions we have, we build these sort of supportive resources in our minds and in our actions for the future. So, you know, negative, we focus in, we think about fight and flight, or we think about survival. Positive emotions broadens us, and we have this approach behavior rather than a retreat behavior. So there's a good reason why we have negative emotions. There's also a really good reason why we should be celebrating positive emotions and trying to get as much of that as possible into our daily lives. So again, the research, this is a Fredrickson study from 2003 in the American Scientist, a really good study. She took 4 different groups and subjected them in column 1 all to the same pretreatment. They were all connected to EKGs and blood pressure monitors. And then they were told right up front, you are going to have to do something that might make you a little nervous. We want you to give a speech in front of people on this subject, and you have very little time to prepare. But this is the situation. And so they would start right away by putting people into this anxiety-producing situation. In column 2, they then showed people short video clips. One group got a clip that was funny. One group got a clip that was just sort of happy or contented. One group got a test signal. They got no emotion from the video clip at all. And the 4th group got a sad video. And then they looked at how long does it take blood pressure and heart rate to return to normal. And you can see in the column 3, the group that watched the happy film had a very quick recovery from anxiety back to their normal blood pressure. The group that was contented had about the same. The group that had no emotion, it took them much longer. And the group that was exposed to sadness, it took them, well, almost twice as long as the other group to sort of bring their heart blood pressure and their heart rate back to normal. Her thesis then is that positive emotions can undo the negative effects of stress. So we're all under stress now. And, you know, the more stress we get, the more it impacts our physiology. This is a classic example that exposing yourself to fun or happy situations will return you to more of a normal baseline. And if we stick with the sad or the no emotion, our blood pressure and cardiovascular system takes longer to recover, which is, as you know, not good for us. So positive emotions physiologically have a real impact on our blood pressure and heart rate and our arterial structure. That's a really good finding. Here, I just wanted to throw this out there. Feelings matter, but in a case that we're dealing with right now, where we're under stress and there is a real issue going on, there's more opportunities to filling in the blanks, and then the result is we become more irrational because we're dealing with how I feel about things. And so this is a great little article from the New York Times suggesting the solution: trust data, trust the scientists. So I want to be very clear on that. And that's why I'm giving you as much science as I possibly can. We can all feel a whole lot, but it's not a great way to make a decision. Our feelings about the issue right now don't matter as much as can we get data and keep informed. So, you know, my advice is as we go through this, and if you want to maintain a positive outlook, look for data rather than, you know, how I feel and how other people tell you they feel. It's really look for the science and go with that. So what can you do? I've put again in this yellow square one exercise that again is tested by science, and you probably heard about this, but this is where it came from. Every night, one group was encouraged to write down 3 good things that happened today. Now it can be done in the morning, could be done at night. Usually I've heard of it being done at night. So you keep a journal and you say to yourself, what was good today? What 3 good things happened to me today and why? And just simply write a note in the journal and keep doing it. The placebo group in this was simply told the same thing. Write in a journal about your childhood. It has no impact other than it's just an exercise to keep those people doing something. But the 3 good things group actually wrote in their journal every night, what happened to me today that was good and why did it happen? And just trying to build that sense of happiness about your life. And you can see the black columns, or the group that did the 3 good things every night, had a really good increase in happiness, and the other group did not. So again, science demonstrated that that very simple and quite popular exercise of 3 good things actually works. And it's a credible thing to tell people to do. So from Forbes, you know, I guess I look at a lot of business journals. A nice little article from Forbes. Number one, limit your access to social media. You know, we're all watching the news. We're all watching the headlines, and we're listening to the scientists and the politicians. It can be overwhelming. So, you know, if possible, limit your access or your attention to, you know, maybe once a day. And for me, it's very difficult. I watch TV, news, and read the headlines and keep informed. But, you know, it's probably better to try and limit it as much as possible and focus on other things throughout the day. But do keep informed, absolutely, but don't have a steady diet of it. You can find things in the house, you know, like all of a sudden people are cooking and staying home all day and doing jobs with activities with their children, and staying online and trying to keep work going. You can find something to do other than, you know, watching the news all day long. And enjoy conversations with others. I can tell you I've not had as many conversations with my family and friends over you know, various applications like WhatsApp in other countries, or on Duo or FaceTime. Just talking to other people that you're keeping in contact has been really helpful, and actually been really good for me. It's been really fun. I think you're probably doing the same thing. And finally, exercise regime. You know, we cannot become couch potatoes as we're all stuck in the home. So find some way to keep fit and do an exercise. You know, this is just a picture of somebody taking their dog for a walk. Where I live, we have a 1-mile circuit around the neighborhood, and we're out there a couple of times a day, just, you know, doing a walk and saying hello to other people. If I'm on the sidewalk, they usually step off and walk in the street. If I'm in the street, they'll step onto the sidewalk. So we're keeping the distance. But, you know, we manage to exchange greetings. I usually call out, hey, humans, because we're not seeing that many people. And, you know, we have a little chat and move on. But, you know, get out, get some exercise, I think, can help you build those positive feelings. Okay, the third block is resilience. Can we build resilience? Can we actually build strengths to get through this difficult situation? It's a complicated subject. I'll just tell you one simple technique that I have, and that I learned actually from this book, Resilience Factor. It's written by Karen Rivich. She's also one of the instructors at the Positive Psychology Center at Penn. And she's written this wonderful book with a co-author. I think his name is Andrew Chate. And it's called The Resilience Factor. It's available online or from Amazon, I'm sure. It's a really good, really easy book to read, but gives you a whole bunch of techniques of managing, you know, your difficulties that you encounter. So she says all of us are going to encounter times in our lives when we get knocked off course. We just get knocked off balance. And the trick is, how do we get back up? Otherwise, you know, if we're going to stay down, it's not going to be good. So if we're resilient, we're able to get up. If we've taken something if we've, you know, been exposed to something that's difficult, knocked us off balance, how do we get back up? And she has a whole bunch of techniques. I'm just going to get into one thing. It's called reframing. Essentially, it's just 2 or 3 steps. If you think of ABC, to remember that in the back of your mind, ABC. First, define your adversity. What is it that is your current major challenge? So I'll just use an example from teaching. A student might say, you know, my adversity, my challenge is giving a report in front of the class. It's really difficult for me. And you know what? Every time I do it, I mess it up and I feel bad. So that's adversity that the person may face on an intermittent basis. The second question is B. What are your beliefs about the adversity? And Karen Rivich says, you have this ticker tape going through your mind all the time. And if you have a challenge, the ticker tape goes through my head. Oh no, here it comes. I'm going to have to do this. I'm always bad at it. I'm going to fail. It's going to be silly. I'm not going to look good. So that's the B. And then the C is the consequences. That's number 3. How does
Hey, Chris, this is Tanya. I'm going to interrupt you just for a sec. Your audio stopped for suddenly. and I'm not sure why. Have you frozen? Yeah, go ahead and say something. No, I'm not sure. I'm gonna mute and unmute you and see if that changes anything. Yeah, go ahead. Where'd he go? Okay. Still, let's see. Well.
Can you hear me?
There you are, yes.
Oh, magically back.
Sorry about that. Go ahead and share your screen again. Didn't mean to interrupt.
See what happens. Let's see where we were. So I was talking. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Just let's be resilient. We can manage this, right? Okay, so adversity, what's your challenge? What's the ticker tape going through your head? And finally, how does it make you feel? That's the consequences. Her idea is that one of the biggest problems is inaccurate thinking. So what are your beliefs about the adversity? Is that really true? So she pushes people to say, you understand what your challenge is. What are your beliefs about it? And are they accurate? And so she talks about disputation. That's A, B, C, D. Adversity, beliefs, consequence, and disputation. Can you dispute the belief that's running through your head? And she finds that many times if people really challenge themselves and say, is it true that every time I go to give a talk, I don't do well? The answer is probably no, it's not true. And so from there, you can go back around the cycle again and say, so, is this true? No, it's not. So I can continue. So she tries to interrupt that whole flow of moving from a challenge to believing the ticker tape in your head and then experiencing the anxiety about it makes you feel bad. She says, challenge your beliefs about what causes you stress and then see if you can undo that by just simply disputing it. So it's a technique from positive psychology. I think that's pretty common, but I liked her idea and I think it's a good one to think about. A, B, C, D. All right, I'm going to move on. I like this one. This was from New Zealand. It's things that matter, overlaying things that you can control, and basically you should focus right where the two meet. Things that matter, things that you can control. Beyond that, you waste a lot of energy, so focus on what you can control. This again is from the New Zealand Institute of Wellbeing. We're hardwired to notice all these threats, and that's good, right? We need to know what the challenges are. But as you tune in, try to share the good stuff too. We're all picking up all the bad information, the unpleasant information. What can we share that's actually on the good side? And I want to tell you this is important. Negative emotions, and if it's prolonged feelings of, I feel helpless, that is strongly associated with depression. So have to watch out for that feeling of helplessness. So basically seek out the people who make you happy. I think we're all trying to do that and do what makes you happy. As difficult as it is right now, do what makes you happy and connect with people who make you happy. That's very important. Maintain your connections, obviously. So this is an interesting graph. This is from the British Medical Journal, but it shows about 1,000 people and their happiness levels. They were studied over the year, and the yellow people, the yellow little blocks, say, I'm the most happy. The people who are green say, I'm sort of happy. And the people who are in the blue blocks, they're the people who said, I'm least happy. What I wanted to point out was, if you look at this, you can see there's clumping, that the yellows in many cases are sticking together. And so, in other words, what we're saying is, if you're happy, your neighbor has a very good chance of being happy if you interact with them. And we impact each other. So these are real life people from a real life study, but it shows that if you look at the big clump of yellow on the right, there's hardly any greens or blues in there. They're mostly happy people. It's a network of people who are sharing their emotions backwards and forwards. Now there's lots of blue around here, but if you notice, they're sort of spread out and often they're at the periphery. They're at the end of the connections of the circle. So the bottom line is it matters. Connections matter, and it also matters who you connect with and what you share. But happy people will influence other people and can increase their level of happiness to a fair amount, and it goes spreading down that group. So connections matter, who you associate matters with matters, and that you can share positive emotions as well as you can share negative emotions, as you can see by some of the clumps of the unhappy people. So it's a very famous study from a very respected medical journal. I think finally we're at the last block here. I wanted to talk just for a second about something from Peter Senge, who is very famous for the fifth discipline. He did a lot of work on systems thinking. This is from an article from the Sloan Management Review. It was published in 1990, so that's quite a while ago. But he's basically saying, in leadership, at the very least, at leadership, we need to have not only a vision of how things can be in the future, we need to have a very good understanding of current reality. So if you think the left hand is current reality and the right hand is vision, and you can see an elastic band between the two, you'll realize that if you spread your hands apart, there's a creative tension. Senge says that creative tension is important. In other words, for us to move current reality up to vision, there has to be a tension. And for us to pull vision up so that current reality goes up to meet the vision, this tension is what drives us to do this. It's, you know, in other words, it's not good enough for a politician to come out and say, I have this great vision. It's going to be fantastic. My vision is X, unless they also say, and this is the current reality. If you get the current reality and the vision, now you have the tension, and it's the tension that drives change. So watch carefully on your screens as you see people talking about our current situation and other situations, and try and check for yourself. Are we hearing about the current reality as much as the vision? If one or the other is missing, number one, if you just get current reality, it's not going to make you feel good. You need someone who's going to tell you where we're going. But you can't say where we're going if you don't say how it is now. So that's the point. It's an interesting thing, but I think it's being proven right now. So the key is to hold this optimistic vision of the future and the vision of where we are. Know where we are and know where we're going. This vision, this tension is what pushes us forward and makes change happen. So deliberate calm is something that McKinsey suggested, and there's a good article from McKinsey. I think it's available to everybody. Deliberate calm, and don't be helpless, right? We are not helpless, and you don't want to have this feeling of helplessness in this particular time. And I think that the vision and the current reality and that tension will help a little bit move us away from helplessness and towards, we have a plan, we know what's going on, and we know where we're going. So this is just the final thing on optimism. When a person feels helpless, it's how she or he explains this. So here's the key. Optimists see failure or difficulties as temporary, and they see success as permanent. Where pessimists see it the other way around. Pessimists see bad situations or failure as permanent and success as temporary. So somehow we need to sort of make sure that our mindset is toward optimism, and that we see this current state as temporary, and we're looking for a change that will give us permanent success in the future, not sort of wallow in the failure and think that this is going to be the way it is. So optimists and pessimists look and explain helplessness in different ways. So here's some stuff from the studies. Optimists bounce back from failed exams, from divorce, unemployment, and disability. Those who explain events with a pessimistic style were less healthy later in life. So there's a huge study done at Harvard where they ask them every year, you know, how they're doing, what their life changes are. And those who were judged to be explaining things in a pessimistic way were found later in life, and they studied these students from graduation all the way into the 80s. So it's one of the biggest studies ever on human health and mental health. Those who explain things in a pessimistic way, things are bad, it's always going to be that way, I always fail, were much less physically and mentally healthy later in life than were those who explained things in an optimistic way. And finally, students who explained things at school with a pessimistic style, like I always do bad, I'm no good at the study, they actually got lower grades and did use an optimistic way of explaining their challenges. So I think science can help us a lot. So going into, again, this is ideas from the web, the greater good, Berkeley. Again, that's a really good place to take a look at. Crises bring out the best in people, and we need to pull together. Protecting others is a strong motivator for doing the right thing. I thought this was really interesting. In the hospital, they would have trouble with people not washing their hands well or long enough. So they put a sign over thing that said, hand hygiene prevents patients from catching diseases. And they found that those signs were much more effective than signs that read simply, hand hygiene prevents you from catching diseases. So once they moved that sign from you to others, people washed their hands longer and did a better job. Very simple, but protecting others is a strong motivator for doing the right thing. And then obviously, if we all recognize we're in this together, we're more likely to solve these complex issues. So I'm going to end here by saying the three most important words in positive psychology, and it's other people matter. And I was told this by Chris Peterson, one of the authors of the positive psychology textbook, if you will, on strengths. What matters to us more than anything, what keeps us healthy, what keeps us in the right mind frame, is recognizing that we need connections and that other people matter. So my advice is reach out, connect, talk to people, you'll feel better, they'll feel better. It's one of the most important and most simple ideas from positive psychology. I had to put a cartoon in here, so I hope you enjoy this one. It's in the backyard in a safe place, and got lots of toilet paper. And then I realized that, wait, did anybody bring any food to the situation? So I just think it's a cute cartoon. All right, I'm going to wrap up by turning it over to Tanya at this time.
Okay, Chris, thank you so much for that. I think now obviously is the best time as any that we need to be hearing from you and about positive psychology and some of the practical things that we can do. We're going to be taking questions in a minute here. So if you have a question, please feel free to type that in to the Q&A section of your screen down there, and we will take those in just a minute. In the meantime, I will let you know that, so if you're joining us for the first time and joining Chris for the first time, we set out to do a single webinar last Thursday addressing crisis and dealing with crisis in just a broad way. And our founder and CEO, Jeff McCausland, was on to present that. And we got an overwhelming amount of interest in that we decided to turn this into a little bit of a series where we're pulling from some experts in different fields to, like Chris, to talk on how can we sort of navigate this better individually and organizationally in such uncertain times. So next Thursday, or a week from today rather, April 2nd, we'll be joined by Molly Stark-Dean. She's a social media consultant with quite an impressive journalism and communications background. So she's going to be talking about leveraging the effective communications and social media during crisis. A couple of things that she's going to speak on. We talked to her this morning, and we'll have some more information coming out shortly. A few things she's going to speak on, is going to be how to integrate and often forgotten. She mentioned a couple of often forgotten communication tools. Everyone's so into, Instagram and Facebook, that's how we're going to communicate with people. But she had some interesting thoughts on using some forgotten communication tools to integrate with social media tools to reach a wide audience. So if you're an organization where you're like a school district, or you're trying to communicate with a broad audience to inform them of what's going on, she's going to have some some ways to do that. She's going to talk about the importance of communicating with consistency and with the same voice in an organization, and how to be really strategic about communications. And she's also going to share some helpful online and social media tools that organizations should consider, or at least check out, to streamline your communications and make things a little easier and focused for organization. Those are a couple things she's going to talk about. Again, that'll be a week from today, April 2nd, again at 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll have more information coming out about that tomorrow, so stay tuned to your email inbox as well as Facebook. Those are the two main ways that we're going to be advertising those. The recording of this presentation will also go out tomorrow to everyone who registered. Will receive a recording of this. When you register for any of our webinars at this point, you will get the link to that current one that you registered for, but that will take you to the recordings for all previous webinars that we've done. So you'll get access to this one, and you'll also get access to the one that Jeff did last week. So just to kind of keep everyone informed on that. Chris, would you mind unsharing your screen?
Yep.
That'll...
There you go.
Wonderful. Okay. So let's see here. Let me just take a quick minute here, take a look at these questions. Okay. Oh, hold on. Let's see here. Laura would like to know, is there a way to transform pessimistic tendencies into optimism, both in myself and when I catch myself, but also in others when they are lamenting, both in peers, also in leading up in those kind of organizational situations?
Yeah, I don't know of any scientific way of doing it, but common sense, common sense tells me that, I think when we're expressing pessimistic thoughts, and probably other people will tell us, hey, you sound like you're on the dark side of this. So it seems to me that signals that we send between each other could be pretty clear, that we could help each other by saying, look on the bright side. We got some good news today. We know this isn't going to last forever. Other countries are beginning to come through the cycle. So I don't know of a simple way of saying we can go from pessimism to optimism, other than maybe tune into yourself. How do you sound? Sometimes I know I can sound dark. And if I get some hint from my wife that, lighten up, she's laughing behind me because she can hear. Perhaps we should ask my wife what she thinks. But I'm serious. I think common sense says if from emotional intelligence, if you are self-aware and aware of others, that's some of the basic skills of emotional intelligence. And if your antenna are tuned to how you sound and how others perceive you from the signals they're giving you back, you ought to be able to try and correct, and do it gently. But you can sort of prompt people to think, look, here's the data, here are the facts, let's look on the bright side and keep going. I'm sure many of your schools are closed. Many of the businesses are closed. My 2 universities are closed. It's a mess right now, but we know they're going to reopen, and we know the students will come back, and we know it'll improve. So, if we explained it on the pessimistic side, we would say it's always going to be this way, and it's never going to be better. The optimist will say it's temporary, and permanent improvement is coming. So try and make that mental switch. Emotional intelligence probably has a lot to do with this.
Chris, it makes me also think the word that just came to mind as you were talking is patience. Mm-hmm. And we don't have a lot of patience, just in general, and on a normal day, right? And how important right now I think it is to remind ourselves that patience is key at this point.
Yeah, I have to say, I was also thinking of this. I'm English and I grew up in England, and one of the cities I lived in was Hull, which is a northern city. And I was probably there at 5 or 6 years old. I can remember there were big holes in the ground that had not been repaired from the Second World War. There were big piles of bricks still 10 years after the war. but people continued on. We recovered, businesses came back, and the country became strong again. It is life. But I can remember as clear as day, the damage in the town that I lived in didn't just get repaired instantly. And we're going to have to struggle through this for a little while.
Right. It will probably take longer, obviously, than we would like it. We would like it to. I heard an interview a while ago with someone who wrote a book called Tiny Habits. The author's name escapes me right now. But as far as the optimism piece, something that really struck me that he said is one small habit that he has every day is the minute he wakes up, he tells himself, today is going to be a good day.
That's nice.
And I thought, it's a little thing. And I thought, I think I'm going to write that on a Post-it note and put it on my bathroom mirror just to remind myself, today is going to be a good day.
And by the way, going back to the example of 3 good things, writing in your journal 3 good things. I mean, it started out as a scientific study. It's now in virtually every mindfulness, popular magazine you can think of as an example. But if you consistently remind yourself of good things that happened to you today, it just can't help but push you towards the optimism side. It just can't help. And the other one I wanted to share, which I didn't do during the presentation, was a gratitude exercise. And this one might be really interesting. It's good to tell people you're grateful for what they've done for you. But Seligman suggested, what if you wrote a letter to someone that you're really grateful for, and then you read that letter to them? And you can do this in person, but you could also do it online, and tell them why you're grateful for them and what it has meant to you. And again, they tracked over time, over 6 months, what happens when people do that. And the effect is remarkable. Happiness increases once you unload and share to that person why you're so grateful. I think both of you will benefit, but particularly the person who shows their gratitude actually can demonstrate a nice boost in happiness.
Yeah, I think that's great. And now might be the best time to do that kind of an activity.
Yeah.
To read to someone.
Yeah.
And yes, Laura, thank you. The author was B.J. Fogg of Tiny Habits. Thank you. And then we have a comment that I think goes in line with what you've been talking about, Chris, to maybe also look at what others are doing to help, I would say, keep us positive and optimistic. And this is from Tony Dragona. So hi, Tony. We know you well, and thank you for joining us today. He's saying schools are often looked upon as those who provide stability in a community, and now more than ever, right? In Union City, New Jersey, which is so densely populated, it is vital for our parents to look upon to alleviate the sense of helplessness. So many parents feeling incredibly helpless, obviously, and students as well. One example is that we distribute 5-day meal packs of breakfast and 5 days of lunch to students to help parents deal with this current crisis, knowing their children will be fed and they don't have to engage in the rush for commodities at the grocery store. And so tell me what you think, Chris, but it seems to me that also, when you talk about looking at the news and not getting so down on all of it, is also to, as Fred Rogers said, look for the helpers. And that, I think, can also help us think positively, to know that our schools are doing everything that they can to support their communities. And maybe there's ways that we can help as well. Yeah,
I've actually been very impressed with some of those reports. I live in a university community. It's probably fairly well to do. The schools are closed, but I still hear reports of, we're taking care of those who are not so fortunate, those who expected a meal today and didn't get it. How do we take care of that? And so people are finding ways to do that, to reach out and connect to other people. If we keep doing that for the next, past Easter, let's just say that, if we keep doing this, I think we will have a very positive influence. But it is, I think of the healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. And all the people who are giving their time and their energy and maybe their health to us right now. That is something to really be grateful for. And, so thank you to everybody who is on that side of the business, helping others. Very important. Absolutely. And we can help them by doing our part, by being patient and staying at home. Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, I think that wraps it up for us. Thank you so much again
for joining us. Like I said, I think this is just invaluable at the moment, is just to hear and remind ourselves that there are things that we can do even from home to remain positive and optimistic in times of uncertainty. And I hope that when we get out of all this, that we can continue any habits that we may have started to continue to be positive and optimistic afterwards as well, right?
Yeah. I'll check on everybody next time we see you.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, Chris, thank you again so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please stay tuned to your inbox for the recording coming your way tomorrow. And please stay tuned for more information about our next webinar coming up next week. Thank you, Chris. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.